here with us. My name is Tamika Hobbs, and I have the privilege of serving as the regional manager for this institution, the African American Research Library and Cultural Center. How many of you have been here before? Any? Okay, so yeah, she's here like every week. One of our members of the Friends of Arlick. How many of you are here for the very first time? Anybody? Okay, got a few hands. Well, a special welcome to you. I want to give you a little bit of history about this institution. We are actually 22 years old come this month, actually next month, October. This building was constructed in 2002. And at the time that it opened, it was only the third such institution in the country. It's modeled after the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture in New York City. And at that time, as they were building the building, we also were trying to populate our archives or special collections. This is where we keep, at this moment, over 1 million items related to the study and preservation of Black history and culture. And one of the things that happened is that one of our longtime supporters, Dr. Henrietta Smith, was friends with a famous artist by the name of Ashley Bryan. He was an artist in his own right, but had begun to illustrate children's books that had won awards year after year that were given by the Coretta Scott King recognition with the American Library Association. So he was a really big name when it came to literature. But Dr. Smith wrote to him and asked him if he would make a donation of his artwork to the African American Research Library and Cultural Center, and he did. But he did so with a condition. When he gave that art, he made us make a pledge at this institution that we would continue to uplift the work of illustrators of color. And I'm proud to tell you that year after year, for the past 22 years here at Arlick, we have held an annual Ashley Bryan art series to do just that, to celebrate diversity in children's literature, and it's most especially diversity among the people who are creating that imagery. So today is a very special day for us. It's actually the third day that we've been in the middle of all of this. We got started on Thursday. We had 200 elementary school kids here from throughout Broward County Public Schools. On yesterday, we had the Conference on Children's Literature with, again, approximately 200 participants here. And then today is a special occasion because all of you will get to hear from our featured author illustrator, Mr. Johnnie Christmas. To do the honors of introducing him, I'm going to welcome up Anitra King, who is the assistant manager here at Arlick. Please give her a round of applause as she comes up.
Good morning. Happy Saturday to all of you. Ooh. Good morning. Happy Saturday to all of you. Thank you. Thank you. So once again, welcome to the African American Research Library and Cultural Center. We are so happy to have you all here. You all are in for a very, very special treat today. Not only do we have our award-winning author and illustrator, Mr. Johnnie Christmas, but we have a local artist, Miss Ruth, who's going to do a drawing workshop. We will have African storyteller by renowned storyteller, Mr. Wendell Campbell. And also we have an award-winning children's book author, Sherry Winston, who will facilitate a creative writing class. Then we're all going to go down to the YMCA and culminate this event with a pool party. So you're definitely in for a day of fun, a day of learning, and a day of creativity and imagination. So I'm going to get right into it and introduce our featured guest on today, Mr. Johnnie Christmas. Johnnie Christmas is a new #1 New York Times best-selling graphic novelist. His 2022 middle grade graphic novel debut, Swim Team, earned a spot on the National Book Awards long list, a Coretta Scott King Award Illustrator honor, and a Harvey Awards nomination. Swim Team is currently a nominee for the Barnes & Noble's Children's Book Award and for the Silver Birch Award. Johnnie is currently hard at work on 2 new middle grade graphic novels for the Harper Alley imprint of HarperCollins. He was also the writer and co-creator of the Image Comics sci-fi series Tartarus and Crema, a hunted romance published by Comixology, and his book Firebird Bug earned a Joe Shuster Outstanding Cartoonist nomination. He also co-created the series Angel Catbird with celebrated writer Margaret Atwood and adapted William Gibson's lost screenplay for Alien 3 into a critically acclaimed graphic novel of the same name. His credits also include co-creating the pre-apocalyptic thriller Sheltered, a graduate of Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York, earning a BFA in communication design and illustration. Johnnie makes his home in Vancouver. We are delighted to introduce to you and welcome Johnnie Christmas as the featured Coretta Scott King Honor Award-winning illustrator for the Ashley Bryan 2024 Art Series. Put your hands together for Mr. Johnnie Christmas.
Hi. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you all for being here. It's so great to see all your faces. I'm from Florida, and I want to talk to you all today a little bit about my journey into art, what got me into graphic novels, and I'm going to go through a little bit about how I make graphic novels and show you guys. So I always loved stories. As a kid, I loved TV. I love movies. I love music, storytelling and music. You know, Uncle Luke, Trick Daddy, you know, Shabba, you know. And I got a little feedback going. Good. All right. Bear with us for a moment. Also,
Check. All right.
the slideshow isn't feeding. All right.
It's on there.
Okay, now. All right, sweet. Let's go into full mode.
We're gonna do this one a little simpler.
All right.
There's the recipe.
Yeah. You guys getting to see a little bit behind the process, how the sausage is made. All right.
Check.
All right, we're live. All right, can we keep this full screen? Thank you very much. Everybody give Orlando a big round of applause. Thank you, Orlando. Lifesaver. All right, so I love stories ever since I was a little guy, growing up in Florida. And of all the stories that I loved so much, movies and TV and music, graphic novels and comics were what spoke to me in a very special way, because I always loved the combination of words and pictures, and something about that combination really spoke to me, because I was a kid who was always drawing and coming up with stories of my own. And graphic novels were also, and like the newspaper comics, were kind of my gateway into reading. It was like my first step into a wider world of literature. So that started to bleed into reading about like superhero comics and so on and so forth. And that got me into Greek mythology, because I started noticing that the Greek myths that I was reading were a lot like the superhero comics that I was reading. You know, Superman is a lot like Hercules or Zeus, and the Flash was a lot like Mercury. And that led to a love of folklore and mythology that was kind of closer to home. Zora Neale Hurston, a Floridian author, folklorist, novelist, she had this wonderful mythic tone to her work. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Toni Morrison. So by the time I hit high school, I knew that I wanted to be a storyteller, and I knew that comics and graphic novels were the way I wanted to do it. And this was inspired by like unique artists like Jim Lee, Mike Mignola, Todd McFarlane, who had their own personal take on a lot of the work. Like I could tell that they made a decision on this artwork. It wasn't standard house style type stuff. So I knew that I could bring my own personality to the work. So how does one become a cartoonist? So there's a lot of work that goes into almost every profession, and cartooning is pretty much the same. So I went to art high school. South Miami Senior High School had a magnet program, and my teacher there encouraged us to just draw everything we could get our hands on. So I started drawing from life. I started drawing like still life. University of Miami had they had like life drawing sessions a couple times a week, and I think it was subsidized because it was really cheap. I think it was like $2. So I would go there all the time. I would draw people on the bus. I started experimenting with line work. And I went on to New World School of the Arts. I started university there, did my first 2 years there, and continued developing my craft in terms of drawing, writing. Went to the Pratt Institute in New York for my last 2 years of university. And I started to really codify my language of art and comics on the page, taking everything that I'd learned with the drawing and writing and bringing it into the language of comics. So finally, when I got into the industry, I knew that I wanted to take everything that I learned and make art that would speak to me and that would resonate to others. So it's funny, like the story of how I got into the industry was that I knew this other guy in town where I live in Vancouver now, and this guy was doing these short 5-page like crime comics, and I thought, oh, this would be interesting. Maybe I'll do like one of his crime comics. So I was like, hey, Ed, like let me do one of these five pages. I'm doing my own thing on the side, but it'd be kind of interesting to work off someone else's script. So he was like, oh, instead of us doing one of these 5-page crime comics, why don't we do a 5-page pitch and send it into a publisher? I was like, man, you're crazy. There's no way they're going to take it, right? But we did it anyway. We sent it in, and they came back with notes. They were like, oh, well, this is kind of cool, but maybe you could change this or that. I was like, all right. So we did the changes, sent it. They came back with more changes and forth for like 6 months. And in the end, I was right. They did not take it. They did not take the book. But we were so like encouraged that they were actually going back and forth with us, that it was actually like a conversation, that they didn't say no outright, that we were encouraged to like send another one in. And that was Shelter, which became my first series that got published, and it launched me into like full-time comic book work unexpectedly, because it was just like they gave us a date to like publish, and all of a sudden it was off and running. Then after that, I continued to work on works with other writers, Margaret Atwood on the Angel Catbird series. I adapted William Gibson's Alien 3 into a graphic novel of the same name. It wasn't the Alien 3 you saw in the movies. Like he wrote one that they never made. So we took his script and like turned that into a graphic novel. And then at that point, I started to bring in some of the love of stuff that I loved from before, like the mythology and storytelling. And I wrote my first graphic novel, which was Firebug, which was about a volcano goddess on an island or whatever. I brought all like the influences of growing up in a Caribbean household and love of mythology, and I brought that into this series. Then I did a sci-fi epic. And then I knew I wanted to do stuff for kids. I wanted to do something for a kids market. So the first thing that I sent in, which turns out to be like the most recent thing that came out, was Gamerville. And the idea behind that was, when I was a kid, I loved video games. I was always like playing video games to the point of distraction, to the point where I was just like, I would like get dizzy, be laying on the ground, still playing. Everybody would tell me to stop playing, but I would just keep playing because I was so into it. So I started thinking more and more about technology and games and how like wrapped up I got into it and how much they spoke to me. And so I came up with Max, this kid who was like super obsessed with video games, so much so that he like hardly leaves his room. His parents are worried, and he decides that well, he gets a lot of his like social value from being good at something, like we all do. And the thing that he's good at is video games. So he gets into this big tournament, and his life's going to change. He's going to be the happiest kid ever once he wins everything. But his mom's super worried about this, so she sends him to camp. But that happens to be the very same week as his big tournament. So it's like prison to this kid. Like he's just like, this is the worst thing ever. This is the worst thing that ever happened to me. I'm stuck in this camp, and like right when like all my dreams are supposed to come true. But having lived in this like human-made unreality of video games for so long, he could kind of see that camp is kind of like a human-made unreality too. It's not the real world. It's like nature and stuff, but it's not real. So he decides to use his knowledge to treat camp like a level of a video game, and he's going to bust out of it the same way one would do a video game. Like, I'm going to get out of this so I can get to the place that I want to be. And of course, when he's there, he starts interacting with the other kids. He starts seeing, getting like a close-up taste of what everybody's into, what their strengths, weaknesses are. So Zanzi is a character who has a fear of change. We've got Dylan, who's like a bully, and then he decides that he wants to be good once he realizes his bullying is getting out of control. Ari, who is bullied by Dylan and wants to get back at him, so he's learning how to be bad, which is more complicated than he thought it would be. And then Tommy, who just wants to punch something. He's just into punching. So I wanted to show what happens with Gamerville in terms of human connection and what happens when you have the absence of it. And which leads to the second thing that I sent him, but it was actually the first thing that came out. And this was a book that, that was born out of my own personal experience. When I was a kid, I fell into a pool and I almost drowned. And I was visiting my aunt in St. Thomas, and I was 5, fell in, and all I remember is like the sides of the pool were just like infinitely far away. And the bottom was like, it might as well have been the bottom of the ocean. It was cold, it was wet, it was terrifying, and it was like disorienting. And I just remember like this fear that I had never had before rose in me like a balloon filling up. It was complete sheer terror. And I don't know how long I was in that pool. It could have been seconds, it could have been a minute, I don't know. My uncle pulled me out of there. But the fear still lives in me. It lives in me like right now. As we're talking, the fear of the water is like still in me. I've taken adult swim classes and all this and that, but the fear is still there because it was like right there I was 5 years old. So I started thinking, I was like, all right, well, so I have all this experience. I've learned my craft. I've learned how to write. I've learned how to draw, this and that. The next book I want to write is a book that I wish someone would have given me, like as soon as someone pulled me out of the pool. What was the book that I needed then? What was the book that the kids I grew up with, my cousins, my uncle, all of them, for the kids from my neighborhood, the kids in South Florida, like where, I'm from Opelika. So I was going to take everything that I knew, everything that I learned, and write a book for them and for me. So as I'm starting to try and write this book and try and figure it out, my friends are asking me, because it takes a long while to make graphic novels, as you'll see when I go into the process of how I make them. And they would ask, hey, what are you working on? I would tell them, okay, when I was a kid, I almost drowned. I'm working on this project. And they would say, oh, that's funny. That happened to me when I was a kid. Or it happened to like my cousin or my brother or the kid down the block. Like everyone I knew had a story, like in the Black community. And I thought this was interesting. Like this, yeah, I've heard the stereotypes Black people can't swim and all that. But it happened to me so early that I just thought it was my own personal thing. I didn't think it was like a larger thing. So I'm getting this anecdotal information. So I then start looking at numbers and research. And one of the stats that jumped out to me was that Black kids between like 11 and 14, which is kind of the target audience of where I was trying to write this book that would become Swim Team, are 8 times more likely to drown in a swimming pool than their white friends. So I thought, all right, so I got this anecdotal information. I got this statistical information, which is disturbing because we know that people from all around the world, all cultures, people know how to swim. People figure it out. So why is it that we African Americans have this strange bottleneck that kind of stopped us from enjoying the skill and passing it down? Well, as you all know, there was a thing called, or some of you who are very young may not know, there were a collection of laws that broke up Americans by race, Jim Crow laws. Now, these laws were, across the entire spectrum of American life, and public swimming was one of those areas as well. Beaches, lakes, pools, beaches right here in Florida were segregated, and Black people did not have access. Some people did, some people did not. But there was a pushback within our community. The civil rights struggle grew to encompass the public swimming areas. Right here, this is from 1964, St. Augustine, Florida. Folks were doing a wait-in to integrate a pool at this motel. And you see over there on the right, you got the manager of this establishment pouring bleach into the water while Black swimmers are in there. So I wanted to make a work that would address all of this stuff. And something else occurred to me, that since parents who don't know how to swim are less likely to have children who know how to swim, how do I bring that into a visual metaphor? And I was thinking, okay, it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. So with the jigsaw puzzle, when everything is working and everything's in place, you can see everything perfectly. But if you start pulling things out of the puzzle, if you start pulling swimmers out of our swimming culture, then parents are less likely to hand it down to their children. And you start having this patchwork within our culture of swimming. So I wanted to give something to our kids here that would help encourage them, to let them know that they're not alone, because I was there too. So I started to, once I realized that the story that I was trying to write wasn't a story about me necessarily, it was a story about access, and who has access to swimming and who doesn't have access to swimming, and how that leads to how that has generational impacts. That's when I realized that, the story doesn't really need to be about me. I can make this like a different character. So I had Bree from a different story, because I thought it would be weird to draw myself 1,000 times. It's just a little too weird for me. So I brought Bryan, and I made her the central figure of Swim Team, and the story started to almost write itself. I was like, well, what happened if I took this character from a totally different story and I gave her my situation, my scenario, my experiences, how would she react? And all of a sudden, the story started to kind of write itself. All right, so I'm gonna go through my writing process, my drawing process, thumbnails, so you guys see how I build a story from the ground up. So once you have your idea, we're going to use Swim Team as an example. There are many ways you can write a script. My PDF is a little blurry, so you can't quite see that this is all text. This is an example of how Alan Moore, the author of Watchmen, wrote scripts. He would write a giant block of text, and he would just hand it. And this is just one panel's worth of description. This is enough for, I don't know how many pages, but for him, how he writes, he just writes a bunch of stuff. And you can kind of see the highlights in there. And the highlights are when the artist went in and was like, all right, this is the stuff I'm drawing. I'm not drawing all the rest of this stuff. And then Faith Erin Hicks, another graphic novelist, the way she writes is very visual. She starts drawing almost immediately. That's her visual language is almost immediate to her process. It comes out visually. That's how she writes. That's how she sees. And the way I write is much more like a movie script when I start doing things. I kind of see it as kind of having a few different hats. I have writer Johnny, I have artist Johnny, then I have Johnny that goes out and sells the books and stuff. So I just kind of leave, I just kind of have separation of church and state, in that way I can kind of really dig into each part of the process. So when I'm writing, my scripts, the final scripts that goes off to my editors and so on and so forth, are very bare bones, very simple. Breeze at the start of the race, she feels upset. The race starts, she's leading the pack, she hits the wall, she wins, but she's not happy. All right. But the way I start off is longhand. I start writing everything out longhand. And because something about the way my process works and was something about putting marks on paper, like whether it be drawing or in writing, I don't know what it is, but it's almost like the same way of storytelling, but through the mark making, which makes me think of the bluesman, B.B. King. They would ask him, late and great bluesman, B.B. King, they would ask him, B.B., why don't you ever sing and play guitar at the same time? You like sing, and then you stop singing and you play guitar, and then you sing and then you play guitar. You don't he didn't play chords and stuff. And he would say, oh, that's because I'm not good enough to do that, which was not true. Of course, he was like, excellent. So in his biography, when I read that, he said, yeah, of course, that's not true. The reason why I do one, then I do the other, is because I see it as almost like part of a wheel. Like I'm trying to say something when I'm singing. And then when I can no longer say it, when like I've reached the limits of how I can express it in singing, I switch over to the guitar and I express it that way. That's how, so he's saying the same thing, but through different mediums. And I don't know, I think there's something to that with the way I throw down marks on paper while I'm writing longhand, and when I'm throwing marks down on paper when I'm drawing. But then I take all of that and I pare it down to that. Because what I want to do is give artist Johnnie room to express it, which leads to thumbnails, which is kind of like an in-between between writing and drawing. So thumbnails are very fast, very quick drawings of the comic, just so you could kind of see what it looks like, so I can see it, how it's going to work on the page. Because I know the story, but like the way you express a story is unique. It's kind of like we all know the national anthem, but when Whitney Houston grabs a hold of it and she started singing it at the Super Bowl, like the way she expressed it on that day was very unique. And thumbnailing is kind of that way as well. You have the script, you know the story, you know how the song goes, but the way you want to express that song in the moment, you have to work that out. So with thumbnailing, I knew it was like I said from the script, Bree starts, she starts the race, she's leading the pack, she touches the wall, she's upset. So I'm just knocking that out. But at the thumbnail stage, I start realizing stuff that I didn't realize at the writing stage, that, oh, okay, I want to go left to right with it. So I get a sense of emotion, right? Because I only have one page for this race. So how do I get this race exciting with one page? Also, you see in that third panel, you'll see when we get to the later stages, the camera is shot from the bottom of the pool up at Bree and the other racers swimming. I didn't know that at the script stage. I just knew that they were racing. But at the thumbnails, I'm kind of working out things, and I'm starting to see, okay, this is kind of what I want to do. And another reason why you want to do thumbnails, I find, is that in English, since we read left to right, the person who speaks first, generally you want them on the left side of the panel. Now, when you're writing things, you're just writing stuff. But you might kind of forget who's speaking when or whatever. You're just trying to get the story out. But when you're thumbnailing, you want to realize, you can see like, okay, maybe if I do it in the wrong order, I get cross balloon tails and stuff, which isn't the end of the world, but over the course of 250 pages, it will get exhausting to your reader. So it's really great to work that out. Another thing that thumbnailing is really good at is that since when you open a page and you start reading, of course, you're trying to read the left page before the right page, but graphic novels are bright and colorful, right? They're designed to catch your attention. So if you have a big surprise on the right-hand page here, your reader is likely to their eye might glance over, right? If you got bright colors or something interesting. So what I like to do is I like to hide my surprises on the left-hand page. So if I'm doing a thumbnail through an entire graphic novel, like I'll kind of forget where all my surprises are. But if I'm doing a thumbnail, I could kind of figure out, okay, let me try and shift that if I can, maybe add a page, take a page out. And that way I'll know where all the surprises are. So if I have something really, really big I want to share with the reader, I could tuck that on the left-hand page. And we go to pencils. Now, pencils are the workhorse stage where you do like most of your heavy lifting. You get all the acting, how your characters act, how they stand, all of that. You bring all that in. You get all your background. You get all the detail in that you can. And so you can see in the top panel, Bree's got like squiggly lines. I knew she was upset, so I'm trying to add everything I can to sell her emotional state. And I'm further selling this race thing of going left to right. Like in the thumbnail stage in panel 1 and 4, we were looking dead at her, right? Like dead behind her and like straight on. But then at this stage, I kind of tweaked her a little bit and started pushing her left to right, like in every panel. So I could really sell this motion of going from one direction to the next. Because every stage of this process, you can change things, you can improve things. That's the beauty of it. Then we go to inks, which are my favorite part of it, because after doing all of this stuff, because like I do every part of the process all the way through. So I'll do my script, all 250 pages all the way through, and I'll do the drafts on that. And then I'll do all of the thumbnails and I do all the pencils or whatever. So by the time I come to the inks, I'm so relieved and I'm so happy to be finally doing something where I'm doing a final ink line, a final line, right? And they call it inks, of course, because in the past you would use black ink, a brush or a pen or whatever, because pencil lines didn't reproduce really well in the past. But a strong black ink line will. So at the ink stage, you know, you're just clarifying lines, all your thicker lines for your characters up front, because that's where your eye is going to land first, and really thin lines for things in the background, because you want it to create this sense of depth with very limited tools, the magic of visual art in a two-dimensional space. And even at this stage, even though it's the final stage and I'm thinking it's the end, even at this stage, you can improve on things. So this is how Miss Etta looked when I was penciling the book. But after I drew her over 250 pages, she started to shift and change. And then when it came time to inking, I was like, you know, I think I'm going to ink her the way like she ended up instead of the way that she started off. And that's one of the wonderful things about having so many stages. You can continue to improve and you can continue to build on what you've got. And then finally, with colors and letters, with Swim Team, I was always doing all of my comic art traditionally with paper, ink, watercolor brush. But with Swim Team, I wanted to do it digitally to see if it would work. But since I was doing it digitally and since time was tight on schedule, I brought in my friend Hillary to do the colors on it. Now, Hillary, what's interesting about her process is that a lot of comics coloring is done on Photoshop digitally these days. But Hillary has this very interesting process where she still does things traditionally with watercolor, paint, gouache. And I thought it'd be really cool to have a book that was based on water that had these traditional methods in it, but with like this digital line on top. So you'll notice like in Swim Team, there's all these, you see like light coming through the pool on tiles. You'll see light bouncing off of the surface of the water and blowing back up on surfaces. Like every chin on every character that's by a pool, there's like blue. And that's, you know, Hillary's strength as a traditional colorist, like knowing actually like color theory and so on and so forth, which really took the book to a whole nother level. And then briefly, before we go to questions, I'll just go through my cover process on Gamerville. Just showing that every part of this process, there's just like so much iteration that goes into it. So anything that any of you who are young artists who want to become a graphic novelist, which you all can, just seeing like all the steps involved to build up to the things that you want to do. Because if I could do it, you guys can totally do it. So with the cover process, it's not unusual for me to do 40 different covers, different ideas. Because what happens with the first ideas that you come up with visually are kind of might be like a little cliche. It's like the first thing that you like. You may have seen a movie, or or maybe you're coming up with ideas that you think might impress others versus something that's really deep. So you have to like blow through all of that stuff and burn all of those levels of stuff up until it gets to the part where it starts getting hard, where you're like, well, what's left to come up with? And you start pushing and pushing. And then you start pushing to some really interesting ideas and to some very simple ideas. So I put little check marks on the ones that I liked. And, I got like video game on top, camp on the bottom, so on and so forth. And I'm trying all these different permutations of that. And you see number 4, which is going to be our eventual winner. You can see how that starts to evolve. So number 4 is number 6 now, and he's got more patches on him. But I'm still working out different ideas, different things in his lightning bolt haircut. I got like in each lens of his sunglasses, there's camp on one side, there's video game on others. I'm trying every idea I could think of until I exhaust them all. And then finally, even when we get to the final cover image, even then there's experimentation. All right, does he wear glasses? Does he not wear glasses? All right, then I ink one. I'm like, okay, we're done. Send it to the editor and get some feedback. And they're like, well, Max looks a little old in this one. All right, so let's give it another shot. And then we land on the one that that ultimately becomes the cover. So thank you guys for listening and your attention. Thank you. So if any of you have any questions about anything, about like the artistic process or anything at all, I'd love to hear it.
Hey, great presentation. It was well. This is my first time seeing this type of process. My son here likes to draw. He has how many comics you have already, William? He has 3 comics that he already
All
created.
right. There you
3
go.
series. So he's doing it in a series, but he's not, he's doing scribble stuff, but his thinking is as he draws, he writes and so forth. For someone who doesn't have like how you're seeing your drawing is so crisp and clear. Is there places that they could bring the characters to life for him, like that if he doesn't know how to draw them?
Yeah, I bet, William, that your drawing is probably better than mine was at your age. Because like we all start somewhere, right? No one's born knowing how to draw. So I would say what you want to do is draw as much as you possibly can. Draw things that you might even find boring, chairs, tables, and stuff. But then also draw stuff that you find interesting. Like draw your brother when he's walking around. Draw like your pets. Draw like if you're sitting around at a pool or a park and you're in school and you got a few moments. Draw who's around, right? Like I had drawings of people on the bus, and that way you'll develop your drawing ability little by little. You don't have to be perfect right now, like at all. You got a lot of time. What'll happen is that as you're starting to develop your drawing ability, you'll start saying it in your own special way. And as you're doing it, it'll be very unique, and there'll be no one who draws quite like you or writes like you either. So just keep at it. You're welcome. Anyone else?
Good morning.
Good morning, Sherry.
Thank you for your presentation. As an author who aspires to one day be an artist, obviously I've been drawing since I was a little kid, but I didn't come into the business as an author illustrator. I'm strictly an author, but I still have that thing that I had when I was a little kid, and I wanted to color and make my own books. So for people who may not have practiced as much as this young man when we were that age, what advice would you give about the artist side of the brain? Like when you were doing your presentation, you showed that you talked about the wheel and writing. I think drawing is the part that comes maybe much more naturally to you. My brain is on the other side where I love to draw, but the story just is there. It's just shouting.
Right.
And I need to have that relationship with the artist side. So what advice would you give to someone like me, or for a student who may say, I like to write, but I wish I could draw too?
Right. All right. So I'll give the advice I give you is a little bit different advice that I would give a student. So what I would say is at the start, like the same stuff I'd give a student, like just continue to do your drawing, draw everything, right? Because what you're doing is just filling up your reserves on. So when you draw a chair, you might have your own interpretation on how you draw a chair, but you need a basis in reality from which to make that interpretation, right? So just go to life. I still go to life drawing and fill up your reserves on that. Now, since you're already in the business, award-winning author Sherry Winston here, everybody, round of applause. If you're already in the business, you're already off and running. You got your writing's already up there, but you want to get your drawing out faster. That's when, and this is what I wouldn't recommend to a student, but what I would recommend to you is lean into style. So take the drawing that you have and the way that you draw it in your unique way, and then just stylize it all the way. And so that way it doesn't have to be a perfect drawing of a perfect sunset on a perfect day. It could be the way you draw a sunset on your kind of sunset. You know what I mean? So it could be very simple drawings. It could be very, you can get like super expressive. Like it kind of frees you up to just go like as stylistic as you can and just like fill up sketchbooks with just get going out far, as outlandish as you can, as far out as you can, and then you could pare it back down to something that you'll find that's much more that sweet spot between what you want to say and what's palatable to readers. But like you won't know where that is until you go all the way to the max.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Morning.
Have you ever drawn books for other people?
I have. Yeah, so when I started off in the business, I started off for, I got my break drawing for others. And I was drawing for maybe like 4 years professionally. And then I started I was like, okay, I really got to get my stories out. So I started writing scripts. And then I started writing for myself. I got one out writing for myself, and then I started writing for other people. I was drawing for other people, writing for other people, and I was trying to catch up with myself. So I've only actually been able to catch up to myself 3 times. The swim team was one, Gamerville was the other, and then Firebug was my first one. But yeah, sometimes it happens that way. So that's why it's good to have the beauty of my career was that I had 2 jobs. I have an art job and a writing job, so it gave me a lot of leeway. Next question.
I had a question. I was gonna ask, did you what were the materials that you used for drawing both swim team and Gamersville?
Okay, so the material that I use for swim team and Gamerville, it's really unique because I'm new to digital. What I used to use was pencil, Bristol board, watercolor brushes, and black ink. And I hope to actually go do both because I love that drawing it traditionally. But with the speed of things like just needing the deadlines, I switched over to digital tools on Swim Team and Gamerville. So what I use is a program called Clip Studio Paint. It's a digital comic book program that's really intuitive. I didn't even have to read instructions. I just started goofing around with it on the first day, and all of a sudden I was making stuff. I know a lot of people use Photoshop, a lot of people use Procreate. So just use whatever it is that you like. Anything that'll get you going, whether it be on paper, whether it be digital, however feels comfortable. In the end result is kind of what's important more so than the process. But the process is important in terms of your enjoyment of it because that'll keep you in the space. Yes, sir.
Hello? Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Curtis Henry, and these are the Henry boys, my 3 youngest sons. I've been an artist all my life, drawing. Today I'm a filmmaker, poet. I did all of that. And I see the talent within my sons who seem to have sometimes no interest in doing it. How do I keep them engaged and keep them interested because I know that the talent is there and what it can develop into without being extra pushy, without being Joe Jackson? How do I keep them engaged without the heavy hand?
Yeah.
Because I know the potential of what's in them. This big guy here can pick up what's the characters you draw?
Dragon Ball Z characters.
The Dragon Ball Z characters. Without thinking, he just sit there and then he say, okay, and he walks away.
Right.
Don't ever want to pick it back up.
So I would say, that's a great question, by the way. It's good to meet you boys. Whatever they like drawing. So if you like drawing Dragon Ball Z characters, don't feel like you need to do an academic approach to things. Well, I need to draw, so I need to draw the proper way. So I need to do plein air watercolors as a sunset or whatever. Draw Dragon Ball Z characters. Just keep going. What you want to do is stay in the love of it. And then as you're developing, you might over time go okay, I've got these things mastered. What else? What's the next hill? What's the next mountain that I want to tackle? But the passion is the most important thing because that'll keep you in it. And then because when I started, I just wanted to draw the X-Men all the time. Going to life drawing was not my idea. It was my high school teacher. He hated all our crazy superhero proportions and stuff. He thought it was ridiculous. But as I was drawing all these like superhero characters and staying in that, I stayed in it long enough that I could hear what he was saying by high school to say, all right, yeah, I'll do some life drawing, whatever. But just stay with the passion. Like if it's whatever you want to draw, whatever you like to make, if it's not even drawing, if you want to start doing sculpture, if you want to start doing filmmaking, you want to start playing with the word, with the poem, whatever it is that you like, that's the most important thing, I would say.
Hello.
Hello.
It might be along the same lines, but I'm kind of wondering, what advice do you wish you had when you first started?
At what age?
Whatever sticks out most
Whatever
to you.
sticks out most. What advice? I wish I would have known that I could just draw whatever. I thought there was like a proper way to do things. But actually, I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I was just doing the stuff that I liked, because I wasn't looking at an endpoint. I was just drawing stuff because I was a kid who drew stuff, and I was coming up with stories to entertain my friends. So I wasn't really thinking of an endpoint. So I was just doodling and having fun. It was the stuff I would be doing anyway. And then ultimately, in the end, it became like by high school, I decided, okay, I think I'm going to pursue this as a career. But just drawing all the stuff that I wanted to draw kept me in that space long enough where I developed an appreciation and a facility at it where I knew I could. But yeah, and I wish I'd have known that I could have continued to start speaking my own language in it and not having an academic approach earlier. I had this one professor in university who was really helpful, because every time we do something really pretty and really flashy, he'd tell us to do it in our own language. He was like, oh, this is nice, but I don't see you in here. I don't see your language. Speak your visual language in this. So that really helped us to go like, okay, it's not just enough to just be technically flashy. Like we need to be saying something. Like, what are you saying? Like, if you're not saying anything, then a machine could do this, Well, now a machine could do it. So.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How do you draw like that?
How do I draw like that? Well, I just draw a lot. I draw over and over and over again. And then over a while, it just kind of starts shaping itself. Like the things that I like drawing, I get a little bit stronger at. The things that I don't like drawing so much, I like try to get better at it. And then kind of the style is basically a collection of your mistakes. So the way you draw a thing is how so you just have to draw it a lot, and then it'll just kind of define itself.
Do you sketch?
Do I what?
Do you sketch?
Sketch, yes, yeah, sketch all the time. I just fill up tons and tons of sketchbooks with drawings, and that really helps me get all my ideas worked out before I do like a big fancy final drawing. So sketch often, sketch as much as you want, and that way you can do all these ideas without having to show anybody just yet. You can work out all your ideas.
So when it comes down to book sales, like what type of platforms do you use to like reach or grow your audience? Just reach more people, kids, the people that are interested in the story that you're creating. Like what type of platforms or what type of sales channels rather do you use? And like how did you even find yourself to be on this stage right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, so when I started, I was doing things independently, and I was about to start self-publishing, just like publish stuff and then go to like comic conventions and like sell stuff at tables, just like, one-to-one. And then I started doing webcomics. So was doing a short webcomic just so I can get stuff out there as much as I could. But then it was just like, because I sent this pitch in, because that was my focus, like, just kind of independent businessman kind of thing, like not built into like the system, just doing my own thing. But it was because we sent in that pitch that I thought was going to go nowhere, and we started getting some feedback from a publisher that then I ended up with an independent publisher. And then that got me into kind of like, they had their own kind of sales channel and they had their own like distribution. So that was really helpful. And then when I did Swim Team in Gamerville, I got hooked up with HarperCollins, and then that got me plugged into a whole different magical sales channel kind of thing with distribution, and I don't know what they're doing right now. Like they do so much, like it gets books everywhere. Like people send me where these books are landing. I'm just like, which is back in, you know, what, like 4 years ago or so, it would have to be me calling that person to go like, hey, you want to carry this and that. So right now it's a whole different beast that I'm still trying to figure out. Like I'm just so interested myself in like, how does this thing work? Like where are all the lines going? But yeah, I'm fortunate in that now I have a publisher who's doing all of that. Yeah. But I completely fell into it because I was going to do it like just independently. And the best way to do that is like when you if you're asking because you're creating stuff. I'm an independent author. Yeah. So the way that I got to that was like through an agent, because I was like, when I was independent, I was like, man, I'm gonna give you 15% for it. Like, what are you doing? You know. But then when I got an agent, I saw what they were doing. Like, I don't know how to get a meeting with HarperCollins, but she does. She meets with them every week. She meets with them 3 times a week with multiple editors. She's got a relationship with them. And I didn't know that that's kind of how that thing worked. So when she's sitting there and having meetings with them and it's all just kind of like nice and easy, she can go, oh, by the way, I've got this artist that I think is really right up your alley. It's really exciting and yeah. And does a thing. And that way it's not like a hard sales pitch. It's kind of like, oh, we're just pals. And well, I think I have something I know you'd like. And they trust her judgment because she only brings them things that they like. So that was like the secret sauce. And then that plugged me into this whole distribution and sales channel thing. So. And we could talk more after also of like how I saw like how one gets an agent. Anyone else? Oh, are we out of time? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christmas. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you very much for your presentation and just sharing your journey with us. Very helpful and very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now, Mr. Christmas will be in Seminar Room 1 to sign books, and you all will receive a free copy of the book today. So as you're exiting the auditorium, you will be receiving a free copy of Swim Team from Mr. Christmas. So he will be right next door. But before you leave, I want to go over the rest of the day with you. Thank you. I want to take an opportunity to thank the visionary of the African American Research Library and Cultural Center, the gentleman who had a vision, had a dream to build this facility. He had a vision to raise money to make sure that we could have a facility in Broward County that preserved, celebrated, and our history, the African American history. Mr. Sam Morrison is in the back of the auditorium. Let's stand to our feet and give him a round of applause. So thank you, Mr. Morrison, for your vision. And we also have an animatronic in our gallery space, and you will see Mr. Sam Morrison in there as well. So the rest of the day, right now from 11:30 until 12 o'clock, you can go to Seminar Room 1, which is to our, I guess, my left, and Johnnie Christmas will be signing books. We also have 3 different activities that will go on at the same time. So starting at 11:45, so you have about 15 minutes to get your book signed. Starting at 11:45, right here in the auditorium, we have Mr. Wendell Campbell, renowned storyteller, who will be doing African stories right here on this stage. He has puppets and he's an amazing storyteller. Mr. Wendell, can you raise your hand for us? All right, so that will start here at 11:45. Also, as you know, Ms. Sherry Winston, award-winning children's book author, will be in Seminar Room 2. Facilitating a creative writing workshop. So not only will you get a creative writing lesson by a children's book author, but you are also going to receive a free copy of her book today. All right, so that's the second activity. All of these are going on starting at 11:45. And then last but not least, we have Miss Ruth Dillard High School graduate, if I want to pinpoint that, but also an amazing author who will be hosting, leading an art workshop in our Gallery B. So please, we have a lot of great activities going on where you can explore your imagination, you can be creative. So please join us, whether you want to learn how to draw, write, or hear some African stories. We have it here today. Once we conclude here, we're going to go over to the YMCA. In honor of Johnnie Christmas's book, Swim Team, we're going to have a pool party at the YMCA that they will be hosting. So it's free swim today. They'll have music, light refreshments. Johnnie Christmas will also be over there. So it's a day to have fun. It's a day to celebrate community. It's a day to celebrate our culture, our art, and our history. All right? Enjoy.